Hi, and welcome to session 2 of Host Helpers. This week we will focus on reaching out in our small groups. We'll focus on evangelism, sharing the good news of Jesus. One of the biggest ways we will do this in the next 40 days is through a service project. This is what you will focus on in this week's session, your service project. If you haven't decided what you're going to do, let me remind you not to think too small. Think bigger than yourself. If you can do it by yourself, then you don't need God's help. In this week's session, we will focus largely on Jesus feeding the 5,000. So, as a group, as a host, I want you to put yourselves in the disciples' shoes. You've got to feed 5,000 people, more than 5,000, because remember, they didn't include children and women. How are you going to do it with just a few loaves of bread and a few fish? You can only do it with God. So again, let me remind you not to think too small. Think bigger than yourself when planning this project. In the book, there are a handful of suggestions on how you might serve your community. Here in Camden, I suggest you reach out to the United Way, reach out to Food for the Soul, CCM, the Alpha Center. These are just a few local organizations that are involved in serving your community. As you think about it, I also want you to think about the giants of the community. You might say, William, what are you talking about, giants of the community? When I speak of giants in the community, I am thinking of poverty, illiteracy, disease, whether that be cancer or addiction. I want you to think about spiritual darkness within our community. How can we reach out together to make those giants become smaller? You have to be creative. And remember, don't think too small, think larger than yourself. A few helpful hints for this week. In your study guide, you will notice in the connection section, there are 4 points. Don't get bogged down in these 4 points. If you have to, only use 2 of them. But really only spend 10 or 15 minutes in the connection section. Then move on to the video and your memory verse, move on to planning your service project, and on to worshiping together. I want to remind you to encourage your participants to read daily their devotion. It only takes about 3 to 4 minutes to read one devotion, and in your connection section, you'll be asked to ask your participants to share what has been meaningful to them in their daily devotion. I hope that this is a wonderful week, and I look forward to hearing about all of the service projects that will take place over these next 40 days. Gary and I are really excited and cannot wait for what is going to happen in these next 40 days.